track. We have an impressive list of speakers as well and content to share, which is why I'm very pleased to introduce you to Michael Popolo. Michael Popolo just celebrated his 5th anniversary at Fox, Global Television and Distribution, and will be presenting an overview of the major SVOD markets globally. So Michael, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so first of all, just a slight caveat that neither Netflix or Amazon or most of the platforms in this presentation publicly release their international subscriber figures by market. We poll clients, consumer surveys, local ratings companies, consultants, all to assist us in gathering information to get the most accurate subscriber metrics possible. So now that I've completely invalidated my presentation, we'll get started. Anyway, as you know, Netflix and Amazon have been very successful, but however, they're facing a host of competitors overseas. Everything from broadcast OTT, pay TV, telecom OTT, MVPD OTT, pan-regional, and hybrid OTT players. So we'll take a look at some of the snapshots. So taking a look at the UK, just to point out that in the lower corner, I've highlighted the number of cell phone or mobile phone subscribers and the number of broadband households in each country, just to give you a sense of the TAM, the total addressable market for each country. The one thing that should be known globally is that SVOD has tons of room to run. These subscriber figures are very, very low compared to what the overall market will end up being. So the UK is a highly developed SVOD market, robust competition from a dominant public broadcasters such as the BBC with their iPlayer. 3 strong ad-supported free TV broadcast networks, Comcast's newest asset, Sky, which is represented with Now TV. But Sky has an estimated 13 million pay TV subscribers in the UK. Unsurprisingly, Amazon and Netflix have done very well, with Netflix leading with an estimated 10 million subscribers, and Amazon sort of just behind them at about 5 million. What you've noticed, what I've done is that we've split the subscribers between Prime subscribers for the shipping and Prime Video subscribers. So the second number is the Prime Video subscribers. And we define Prime Video subscribers as someone who accesses Amazon Prime Video at least once a month. Okay. And I also said unsurprisingly because Netflix and Amazon consider subscriber tastes in the US, Canada, the UK, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa, all when making their decisions about what to produce for original series English language content. So doing quite well in an English-speaking market such as the UK. So taking a look in France, the US tech companies are actually dominating in France, handily beating the local platforms. One of the things you may note is that Canal Play, even though it was shut down, the shutdown of Canal Play has absolutely nothing to do with the US SVOD competition. Of course, that didn't help, but really that comes down to a loss of sports rights. They lost some football, soccer rights, and so Canal Play has been under tremendous stress. However, one of the more interesting things that's emerging that you can see at the bottom of the chart is Salto. And so what Salto is it seems to be this Hulu hybrid AVOD SVOD model, where the major broadcasters, the 2 largest ad-supported, TF1 and M6, are teaming up with the public broadcaster in the market, France Télévisions, and so they're pooling their resources and pooling their content to launch an SVOD platform to compete with Amazon and Netflix. No pricing models have been announced. They're expecting to launch by the end of 2019. However, here, it's going to be interesting to see once these models start to develop in SVOD, how when they have all of the local content in the market and the local content dominates, what's going to happen to Netflix and Prime Video when they don't have that content any longer. Taking a look at Germany, the US SVOD services have been even more successful in Germany. And as in France and in the UK, there is robust competition from public and private broadcasters and pay TV, with Sky Germany having an estimated 6.2 million subscribers. And then similar to France, you can see down at the bottom, there's been another sort of shared broadcaster OTT between ProSieben, which is one of the sort of the NBC of Germany, and US network Discovery with their Eurosport. to, again, try to launch a more robust SVOD offering. In fact, this summer, when I was doing a client visit for Amazon Germany, you would think, of course, that Amazon would be looking for what they traditionally look for, which is sort of these independent, serialized shows. Actually, in Germany, they were looking for big broadcast network shows. They wanted shows like 911 and The Passage. So their audience is so big that they're not looking at these sort of niche-y, serialized series. They really want something that appeals to a mass market audience in order to grow their subscribers. The next 2 years in the European SVOD market are going to be hyper competitive. What's happened is that the EU has passed a regulation saying that if you want to operate an SVOD service in Europe, 30% of your content has to be European content. So this has traditionally been a big windfall for the broadcasters because Amazon and Netflix have been buying their shows. And so in France, a French show is owned by TF1 or M6, and then overseas in other markets, it's considered an original series. So what's going to happen over the next 2 years is that Amazon and Netflix are going to try to buy up as much European content as they possibly can. And then all of the revenue that comes into the broadcasters, they're going to funnel into funding their own SVOD services. So they're going to want additional content that they're not going to sell. So why the next 2 years are going to be hyper-competitive? It's a race to see if the broadcasters can launch their SVOD services to compete with Amazon and Netflix before Amazon and Netflix can hit the 30% quota. So it gets super, super, super interesting. A lot of these series, you may know, are here in the US on Netflix. And so just taking a look at what this model sort of looks like, so if any of you have watched The Bodyguard, that's actually a BBC show that is now a Netflix original here in the United States. So it's going to be very, very interesting. And a lot of these stations are not, a lot of these broadcasters are not just broadcasters in Germany and France. A lot of them have pan-European and multi-market businesses. So they'll be competing with Netflix and Amazon in multiple markets, in France and Germany and Spain, all at the same time. So it's going to be really, really interesting coming up. Flying halfway around the world? Yes, yes.
So with Brexit, Netflix has to start over again.
Yes, Brexit gets really, really interesting because post-Brexit, UK content is no longer considered European content. Now that's just UK content. So this becomes another problem because in Germany and France, when they had The Bodyguard, that's considered European content. As of April, it will no longer be considered European content. So it's quite interesting across the pond. It's going to be really interesting in Europe. Any other questions, just feel free to interrupt at any time. It's perfectly fine.
Tell me again the date of that change. So it's 2021?
What the EU is allowed to do is they have allowed to grandfather in services that currently exist. But then you have until, I believe, Tim may know a more specific date. But I believe it's sometime in late 2020, early 2021, you have to hit that 30% quota. So they've got about 2 years to make it there. This gets even more interesting with the launch of Disney Plus, because now Disney Plus isn't grandfathered in. So if Disney wants to go into Europe, they also need to hit this 30% European content quota. So this is going to get even more interesting for Disney and anything else that launches, right? Warner Media with AT&T, Warner Media with their service, Comcast, NBC Universal with their service launching. So Europe's about to get real, real fun.
It's essentially helping the hegemony of Prime and Netflix.
Yep,
Okay, thank you.
absolutely.
And it doesn't matter, viewership doesn't matter, it's just your 30% library.
Yes, you just have to hit 30% library. Now this can be Balkan TV shows. This can be Yugoslavian TV shows, as long as you're hitting the 30% European content. And this is, again, the EU hasn't been real specific about, is that content by number of hours? Is that content by volume? What is the metric that is going to make this 30%? But it's going to be real interesting because all that money is going to go to the broadcasters. They're the ones buying all of their shows, right? A Very Secret Service, Call My Agent, The Bodyguard, Babylon Berlin. They've been buying all these shows. Broadcasters are going to pour all of that Netflix, Amazon money in the next 2 years into their own services. But then they're going to want to turn off the spigot. So this is going to get really, 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 really interesting.
Could make a really good TV show.
It will. It will make a really good TV show. It's true. Japan is also a very competitive market for the US SVOD platforms. However, they've had sort of mixed results in Japan. Amazon has done very well, but as you can see from the price point, they're practically giving away the shipping. So Amazon is running at a really, they are in a hole revenue-wise in Japan, no doubt about it. It's having a benefit, but once they start increasing the price, it's going to be very interesting to see how that turns out for Amazon. Netflix, as you can see, has also done not as well in the market. However, Netflix has really refocused their strategy around original content for anime. So that's what they've really been looking at to try to make better headway into Japan. Although local Japanese content is the most popular content on SVOD, what's interesting is that Korean talent shows, Korean dramas, Chinese and Taiwanese shows also do very well on SVOD in Japan. So it's a very interesting content mix. Okay, so here we enter the biggest battleground, the Colosseum of SVOD, India. So for the US global SVOD platforms, India is the biggest battleground now between Amazon, Netflix, and now Disney. Over the next 5 years, India is expected to have over 550 million SVOD subscribers. For those of you who are researchers, that is 67% larger than the entire population of the United States. Huge, huge, huge opportunity. India has more than 850 satellite channels. Content is provided by more than 350 media companies. Creates a diverse range of content in multiple languages and multiple platforms. How many multiple languages? I'm glad you asked that. India has over 22 official languages. So when you're creating these series, and because India is so massive, take a look, 1.3 billion mobile subscribers. It's a massive, massive continent. So any one of these languages has a US-sized audience, 200 million, 300 million, 400 million people. Whether it's Tamil or Tagaw, it's very, very interesting to see what's going to happen in India. And very, very, very competitive with the local players. Amazon and Netflix are heavily investing in local content. Netflix has announced 13 original series and 12 original movies. But Amazon is well ahead of Netflix with over 1,000 films in multiple languages and over 30 original series. Just to show you how serious of a battleground India is, Reed Hastings has visited it twice, has gone to India twice in 2018. In fact, he is on record publicly stating that Netflix views the next 100 million subscribers as coming from India. Yes?
Did you mean 2019 or
2018, I'm sorry. Reed Hastings was there in 2018. I have no idea where he's going in 2019.
2018? Okay. It would have been more interesting if he'd been twice in 2019.
Right, exactly, right. Just in this first month. And then where the Indian market gets even more interesting is because Disney, via its purchase of Fox, ends up getting Hotstar. So now this is a market where you're looking at Disney, Amazon, and Netflix competing head-to-head. Also, one of the problems that you can see is that Netflix, if you look down at the very bottom, Netflix is the most expensive service, which is actually hampering its growth.
This seems like it's a pretty big disparity in terms of the ticket price, right? 44 cents versus $9.50. Are they looking at different segments of, income segments to that? Or?
Yeah, India is very interesting because there's a really specific caste system. There's really the super rich, the wealthy, the middle class, and then people who are lower class. So they're really trying to go after all these different segments. And remember, capturing any one of these segments can be capturing hundreds of millions of subscribers. The largest population of subscribers, probably 400 to 500 million people, live on less than $1 a month. So it's really interesting to see all the different works that are at play here. India is going to be, like I said, it's going to be the Colosseum of SVOD, definitely.
Do you see the Hotstar, the monthly cost going up as soon as, when did Disney acquire Hotstar? How long ago was that?
Disney still hasn't acquired
Oh, it's not
Hotstar.
official yet.
It's
Oh,
part of
it's part of Fox.
21st Century Fox.
Oh,
So
okay.
once they acquire Fox in the next month and a half, they will then own Hotstar.
And do you think the monthly price will be increased?
It's going to be interesting to see. Again, part of the uplift for some of these is it's not so much series and movie dependent as it is with sports. So what's happened is that Hotstar has come in and Hotstar has purchased the most popular sport in India, which is cricket. So that's what's really led to their subscriber growth, but it's cricket combined with all of their local content, all of their local movies. Yes?
But yeah, but I mean, I nodded my head no, just thinking it's going to be an AVOD service, they're going to make the money from ad revenue versus sub revenue. Are there large segments of the Indian population that don't have access to TV service without one of these services, or would this be supplemental?
It's an interesting question. So what happens is that most of the experience that they're having, most Indians have, is on their mobile phones. So it's very much a mobile population. What has driven all of this growth in the India market, and it's really only been over the last, I would say, 2 years or so, is that for the first time, the largest telecom there, Reliance Jio, decided that they were going to offer 4G service at cut-rate prices. This has led to massive, massive, massive amounts of video uptake in India, because it was the first time that there was kind of a nationwide 4G footprint that was happening. But it has goosed all of these. So to your point, a lot of these services are not, the AVOD is where they're making most of their money versus the SVOD. What India is trying to do right now is they're trying to move people from free into pay. And what they're doing is they're using sports to do it. India actually, for the first time, what they would do is, if you were a paid subscriber of SVOD, you could watch the cricket matches live. If you're an AVOD subscriber, you could still watch the cricket matches, but it was on a 5-minute delay. 5-minute delay. So again, you weren't watching it live. Someone scores a goal, someone gets ahead, you're a little bit behind the times. And so what they're trying to do is incentivize them to move from the AVOD into the SVOD tier, and they're using sports to do it. So just for those of you who are a little bit eagle-eyed, and this doesn't get a lot of publicity, of course, because they don't release their internal numbers, but actually Amazon is ahead of Netflix in at least 2 different markets, and highly competitive in India. These numbers are very much debated of who's got more between Amazon Prime and Netflix. Yes, sir?
What's the source of these?
So there's tons of sources. So it's anything from internal information that we receive from clients, talking to consultants in the market, making our best guesses, looking at Morgan Stanley investor reports. So it really can vary. I wouldn't take any of these numbers to the bank. I wouldn't go to Netflix and say, I know how many subscribers you have. None of this is sort of publicly released. But this is the best that we can do in terms of estimates from the market that we're taking. Finally, the largest market for SVOD in the world is China. These companies are the BAT companies. So it's Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent. So Baidu owns iQIYI, the very last one at the bottom. Tencent, of course, owns the Tencent video platform, and then Alibaba owns Youku. What you will notice in this slide is that there is a complete absence of any US SVOD players in the marketplace. Just like with Facebook and Google, they've been completely shut out of the market. Now, going back to what we were talking about before with India, it's also going to be extremely interesting because now India is looking at the China model and seeing how what regulations that they can pass to sort of promote local players before the US SVOD, which already have quite a large audience and growing. So it's going to be very interesting to see. And then finally, so this is the battle for global entertainment paid subscribers. It is currently a 1 billion subscriber market. Huge, huge, huge amounts of revenue, but a long, long, long runway to go. And as you can tell, actually Netflix is doing quite well, even over the Chinese platforms, with Prime as a fast follower. But this promises to be the battleground of the future. Any questions?
Seems like Spotify's the smart one. Play someone else's music. You don't have to make your own content. You have 87 million paid subscribers.
Well, what's going to be interesting is you're already seeing Spotify, I think, sort of play with it. Spotify is going to start to play with what is Spotify video, what content makes sense for Spotify.
Yeah.
It's also going to be interesting with Apple, right? What does Apple actually do with their video content? Are they going to make it part of Apple Music? Is it going to be a separate standalone service? Are they going to roll it out just to the hardware? It all gets very, very interesting to see. And Spotify is going to hit a certain number, and they're going to need video to try to turbocharge their subscription base beyond where it sort of is now. Yes, sir.
The Chinese services, any U.S. content on their services?
There is some U.S. content that exists on their services. Just to give you a sense of it, so AMC won't talk about it, but if you actually go on one of these services, The Walking Dead is actually its biggest market is China, that has approximately 50 million viewers. Now in China, with 1.3, 1.4 billion people, that's nothing. That's less than 0.001% of the market. But considering 50 million people watch The Walking Dead, yeah. The interesting and the difference is that these local Chinese players, it's all about local content. Korean content, Japanese content, Taiwanese content. US content has not done well in China on any of these services. It's not something that drives subscribers, growth, or that they're watching. Netflix actually signed a deal with iQIYI, the one with the 104 million subscribers, because they couldn't get into the market. So on iQIYI is where House of Cards, Orange is the New Black.
Could it also be argued that Spotify is the most vulnerable and that they don't have the content? Other companies can reproduce their value proposition probably cheaper than they can without their own content?
It's an interesting point. The thing I think is happening is that all of the record companies globally, right, Sony, Universal Music, all of them have really realized that they need streaming to work. Downloading of music is practically dead, so they need Spotify to work, I think. And what's interesting is if you take a look really at the differentiator between Spotify and Apple Music, is that Spotify is really a discovery service, right? We're not sure what you like or what you want to listen to. Spotify can kind of algorithmically kind of lead you along. Apple Music has really differentiated itself as sort of a snobbier music service. This is where all of the R&B and hip hop lives. This is where they're doing the Drakes and the major stars sort of gravitate towards Apple Music. So Apple is sort of positioning itself as sort of the snootier, high-ground music service, whereas Spotify is sort of the everyday, everyman. I'm not a music fanatic, but I'm looking for something to listen to. I'm looking for a podcast. So it's going to be interesting. But I think that to answer your question, I think the record companies and the record labels are so heavily invested in making money from streaming that they need Spotify to work.
My understanding is that some of these other markets, like China, are ahead of the U.S. in 5G development or like the penetration.
Yes.
How do you see that affecting the trajectories?
It's interesting. I'm not exactly sure. I don't think China has had any greater of a rollout than the United States had, which is basically like 5G is launched in the United States. I believe the first launch like September, October. Small cities, small pockets, small trials, small subscriber, not quite ready for prime time probably until 2019. I really think 5G will take off in the United States around 2020. But in China, it'll be a much bigger, much quicker rollout. It will definitely help with their domestic consumption. Again, because all the U.S. players have been shut out of the market, even if it accelerates at a rapid rate, it doesn't do Amazon or Netflix any good. Yes, sir.
What's more likely to happen first? One of the big U.S.-based players launches in China, or one of the three Chinese players see meaningful traction in other major markets?
I think you'll see the Chinese players have meaningful traction in other markets. What's interesting about each one of these players is that video isn't really primed to any of how their services manage to run and operate. Baidu is a search engine, just like Google. Alibaba is an e-commerce giant, so that's sort of their main business. And Tencent is really a mobile gaming platform. So they're the ones that are looking at sort of Fortnite. So they have a lot of other bigger businesses that they're much more concerned about. Video is an important part, but not a key element or a key driver for any one of these companies. The bad companies, Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent are massive tech data giants, absolutely massive. the good news is, especially in places like China where the service costs are so low, that it's the bottled water theory, right? Why pirate something when I can get a virus or be cyber attacked? There's always going to be piracy. It will always exist. Definitely the SVOD services, all of them globally, have definitely helped this problem out, given their price point, given their cost, given their ease of use. There'll always be piracy. There's nothing you can do about it. It's strictly whack-a-mole, even with these services. But I think it's helped. I think all of these SVOD services, Netflix, Amazon, having all this content, having it so easily available, having it in HD and high quality, has definitely helped.
I think that companies like Netflix are thinking of their global original rights. So anecdotally, it seems like these are trying to travel as well as dramas, but even within dramas, if you have a global show that you roll out into all territories, maybe something like nudity is okay in the US, but completely widely accepted in Europe, but taboo in India and the Middle East. Like, how do they think through their global content development?
Well, that's an interesting question because they look at it on a massive scale. Like what I was talking to you before is like when they're making a consideration for English language content, they're not just looking at the US and the UK. They're looking at all of the English-speaking markets in the world in terms of what to reproduce and how can we. The Crown is a perfect example. Crown is a UK show. It was specifically made to bring in UK subscribers. However, Canada, US, Australia, New Zealand, all part of the Commonwealth, right? All have a relationship with the monarchy. So you look at the Crown, and what they're really looking at is what percentage of our subscribers in each market can we get a certain penetration on. What's interesting about Netflix is what Netflix is trying to do, or one of the questions we always get is like, how much is enough, right? They're spending $12 billion in 2018, and $14 billion in 2019, and $16 billion in 2020. How much is enough for Netflix? And I'll tell you the exact number. What they're looking at is they're looking to get to 80% viewership of their original series on a global basis. And then 20% for acquired content. And that way, when all the studios start pulling all of their acquired content, it's not going to matter. Netflix already has all of the original content that they need. To your point about comedy not traveling, all they need is small audiences in 30 countries to justify the cost of that show, right? Even if you get, 5,000 viewers in South Africa and 1 million in the UK, and then 500,000 in Canada, and then 20,000 in Japan, that all starts to add up to 6, 7, 8, 9 million viewers for a US half-hour single camera show. So they look at it very strategically. They look at a modified viewership share, but when you start looking at it on a global platform basis, even for shows you would say wouldn't work, wouldn't travel, wouldn't be popular, they do quite well. They do quite well. Essential, have to have the good place? No. But definitely has an aggregate audience? Yes.
Do you think, building on that, this is a related question, do you think Netflix will get better in their recommendation algorithms so that to be able to make sure that they are as sticky as they can be with their audience?
To be perfectly honest with you, I think the Netflix recommendation algorithm has actually gotten worse, right? It's first of all, it's not really a recommendation engine, right? It's really a personalized recommendation engine, right? Even if you're part of the same household in the same account, you're seeing a really personalized recommendation as it goes through. But that doesn't mean that what Netflix can't do. They're like a record producer at the booth where they can just start pushing up and amping up what goes into your new content and what happens. So this is actually where I think the studios have an advantage, which is that we've gone, I think, pretty much as far as we can go with algorithmic content discovery. So now it's time to get back to actual content discovery the way the studios knew how to do it. This is a really good show. You're going to like this really good show. What I will give Netflix a lot, and Amazon, a lot of credit for is, to me, 2018, last year was really the year of international TV series breaking through. If you weren't working in international business, you may have heard of some of these shows, but you had no opportunity to watch Sacred Games or Babylon Berlin or Sex Education. It just didn't exist. And now these platforms have really brought international TV series into the mainstream. There was another question.
Yeah, I'm curious if you see, like, globally any differences across cultures in terms of like preference for ad-supported content versus purely paid content.
Well, this is the dirty little secret of SVOD, right? In every single market and in every single territory, with the exception of China, YouTube is the most successful content platform. More content is consumed on YouTube in these countries than anywhere, and more money is made off of YouTube in these countries than any other SVOD platform is happening. So what we're seeing now, and we're just seeing this emerge, right, with Viacom buying Pluto TV, IMDb, which is Amazon launching Free Dive, you're going to really start to see what's going to happen in every country is subscription fatigue. I have 3-4 services. I don't need any more. And so the alternative to that is going to be AVOD. So these services are going to start. It's free. People love it, and because it's free, they're willing to watch commercials just to interact with that content. We have 2 minutes, so last question.
My question was actually going to be about YouTube. What role does YouTube play in content discovery? Like, are people kind of using this, like, if I'm in China and I see a show on YouTube that I don't have access to, what do you know people?
Well, they can't see anything. You can't see YouTube in China technically. You have to VPN through the Great Firewall. But can you find a different country and I'll try to help you on that?
Okay, any other country.
Say your question again.
So, what role does YouTube play in content discovery? Are they watching content elsewhere once they find on YouTube, or are they staying on that platform?
They're usually staying on that platform, just like here in the United States. Again, YouTube content is the same everywhere else, right? It's mostly user-generated content, clips, news shows, something small like that. So it's what's interesting is that the YouTube viewer isn't, you can do both subscription and YouTube. Obviously, we all do that. We all watch stuff on YouTube. But it just depends on how much time. Like those of you who have children know that they'll spend hours on YouTube and never leave that site. So, and that's the same thing that's happening on a global basis with YouTube. It's a massive platform that makes a ton of money from content. All AVOD. It blows all of these services out of the water. Thank you very much for your time.